Hello again. In this video, I'd like to briefly discuss scripts and Markdown documents. And I don't think anything in this video is going to shock anyone. I've been using Markdown documents in all my previous videos, but let's just make sure we're on the same page. So in R, we can run code from the console. If I type the code 2 plus 2 and I press enter, that code will execute and I'll get 4. I'll get the output. Sometimes this is really convenient, but for lengthy or even small size data analysis projects, the console is not the way to go for a variety of reasons. Among other reasons, among other things, data analysis is almost always collaborative. So we're, sharing code and sharing our results, and the console is not conducive to that. But really the console is just not conducive to the standard workflow in general. Like, suppose I am part of a research team that is looking at student success at my college. And I'm trying to answer the question, do in-class and online students have different grade distributions? I'm going to show you some code, but I'm not going to talk about it, and you don't have to understand any of it. I'll just provide a little commentary when it's necessary. This project, the code I want to run, uses the tidyverse, so I can type library tidyverse and press enter. I need to import student data. I'll run a data import line of code and press enter. I need to clean my data. So for example, I'm looking at student grades. I want to get rid of withdraws and academic withdraws. I only want to look at standard letter grades. I only want to look at traditional age students. And I'm doing some cleaning in the ethnicity column. There are a bunch of ethnicities in the data frame, but I am only looking at white, Black, and Hispanic students. We'll talk about why in a moment. But I press enter and the code runs. I create an object I need for my statistical test. Again, never mind the detail. I press enter and the code runs. I perform the test, press enter, the code runs. I view my result, press enter, the code runs. If you don't understand this, that's fine. Again, this is all stuff we'll talk about later in the class, including how to interpret statistical tests. Very well. Now, I filtered my data and only looked at three ethnicities because prior to this, I was doing some machine learning. And machine learning required the machine learning I was doing required that all of the ethnicities be well represented in the data. So the reason I only looked at white, black, and Hispanic students was merely that those are the only ethnicities that showed up enough for the machine learning to work. But now I'm doing something else. And I realize that for this other thing I'm doing for this statistical test, there's absolutely no reason to filter by ethnicity. It would make a lot more sense to just look at the entire student body. Okay, so I need to redefine this set, data underscored clean, to include all of the ethnicities. So I take this and I copy and paste it, but I skip the ethnicity filtering. And let me see, something went wrong there. Okay, never mind. Take it from the top. Library, import the data. Data cleaned, but skip the last row. Now I can create my grade table again, and I can do the tests again, and I can view my result again. So you see, when I wanted to make a change, when I wanted to stop looking at our three most represented ethnicities and look at all of the ethnicities, I had to manually redo a bunch of stuff. Now, a script would have avoided that all of that nonsense. Um, when you're working in a script, you have to manually run the script. If I press 2+2 and press enter, the script doesn't run and the code doesn't execute. I'll copy and paste, and now I have all of this code inside a script. From the very first line where I load the tidyverse to the very last line where I view my result. And when I run the script, the code will execute from top to bottom. Just like that. And now, when I say, hold on, I don't want this line of code, well, I can just erase the line of code and run the script again. See, it's very easy to make changes like that to the code, and it doesn't require you to then do a bunch of manual copying and pasting and rerunning other code chunks. So this is obviously very convenient. It's a file, so I can email it to people. I can easily share it. Advanced, as I say, advanced isn't really the right word. Nothing I'm doing here is especially advanced. Real world data analysis is not done in the console. It's done using scripts and or markdown documents. So now let's show you markdown documents. Markdown documents are useful because they let you combine code and explanatory text. Like here, going back to the script, I can run the script and I can get the output, but now what do I do? I mean, now how do I explain the results of my test? I mean, I can now create a Word document and I can summarize my results in a Word document. And then when I share my results, I have to share the Word document and I have to share the script. So the number of things I have to keep track of is increasing. Markdown documents are intended to allow you to both, do the written interpretation of the code and God, I can't speak today. I'm sorry. But you see, a Markdown document can combine just standard text with code. I'm not going to go into the details because the details are on Canvas. But let me show you. Grade analysis. I write whatever explanatory text I want to write. I will perform a chi-square test to see whether the grade distributions in online versus in-person classes are different. And now you see I have a code chunk. This there are these three little ticks. Then in curly braces are the language we are using. The code goes here, and then three ticks ends the code chunk. So I'm going to take this code and I'm going to put it in the code chunk. And now I can run the code quickly and I can see my result and I can knit the document. And now we wait. This is very simple. Let's see. Could not find a function. You are perfectly correct. I did not run a library tidyverse. Maybe I'll put that in a different chunk. I'll run the setup chunk. Now I'll run the code chunk. And now I'll nick this whole thing. And let me make sure this is sharing. There we go. You see, I have my written text explaining what I'm doing, and I have my code, and I have my code outputs all in a single document. So now instead of, having a separate Word document where I'm explaining everything, I can put everything inside a single Markdown document. Let me see, am I sharing the right thing? So Markdown, I mean, your textbook will say that Markdown has been superseded by something called Quarto. Quarto is very similar to Markdown. The difference is that Quarto handles other programming languages as well, whereas R Markdown is, specific to R. They're very similar. I'm going to use Markdown just because it's what I'm most familiar with in this class.